You ever had the flu shots before? Never? Okay. You work here or you've been there? Okay.
It's important to be vaccinated against influenza, especially if you're in a high-risk group. It's hard to avoid exposure to the flu because it's highly contagious, usually spread from person to person through coughing and sneezing. Having a cold is not necessarily having the flu.
Most people, when they're ill, they say they got the flu, but that's not influenza. Influenza, as I said, is a moderately severe disease where the common cold is like a runny nose, sore throat type thing that lasts 7 to 10 days. Influenza is a disease that starts with very sudden onset of fever, chills, you become very tired, prostrated, you have a deep, dry, hacking cough, and it can later develop into upper respiratory infection. But you're extremely tired, worn out, and you more or less feel like you've been run over by a Mack truck, and that can last 7 to 14 days. Probably takes about 2 weeks before you start feeling better again.
One way to avoid all that is to roll up your sleeves. While flu shots can be given to people of any age, the immunization, which protects against 3 flu strains this year, is most important for those in certain risk groups.
We try to, in public health agencies, we try to target our vaccine to people who are most at risk for getting complications of influenza. That is people over 65 years of age, people who have chronic medical conditions, people who are caretakers of elderly people or individuals with chronic medical conditions, people who are immune compromised. And this year, the Center for Disease Control has recommended an extra group be vaccinated, and that's women, pregnant women who are going to be in their 2nd and 3rd trimester of pregnancy during the flu season. A lot of people think that I don't want to get the flu vaccine because it's going to make me sick, it's going to give me the flu. And we really find that there's very few side effects from this vaccine. A small percentage of individuals might get a little bit of a fever and feel just a little achy, maybe like you've exercised too much a short time afterwards. But as a whole, there really are very few side effects from getting the vaccine.
While the vaccine has been proven to be safe and effective, there are some people who should avoid it.
The influenza vaccine is actually made and grown on egg chicken embryos, and so individuals who have an allergic reaction to eggs, and by that I mean people who get hives, throats swell up, a true anaphylactic reaction, people who just don't like eggs, it's okay for them to get the vaccine.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control says the less severe type B influenza strains are expected to dominate this winter season. And the more dangerous type A strains haven't changed all that much and are similar to those seen last winter in Milwaukee. But many thousands of people will still get sick.
What we've seen in Milwaukee over the last 25 years or so that I've been here as chief virologist, usually between 10 and 20% of the population are infected with influenza every winter, so I would assume it would be somewhere in that range.
Because the viruses that cause influenza are constantly changing and immunity declines in the year following the vaccination, people who need the vaccine should get it every year.
Because influenza is a virus that's usually classified as one that has a constant disease but a changing virus, and the virus changes from year to year through genetic mutations. It's actually forced into changing because it infects so many people. A lot of people develop antibody to that, and then when the virus comes back, the same virus couldn't infect those people again, so it's forced to change slightly so it can start reinfecting people again.
Influenza season continues well into the early spring of the year, so it's really never too late to get a flu shot. From the time you get the vaccine, it takes about 2 weeks to build up a good antibody level in order to be protected. So if you haven't been vaccinated and you haven't gotten influenza yet, it's a good time to get the vaccine.
The Visiting Nurse Association and the City Health Department are working together to provide vaccines this year. The cost is $10 for a flu shot. They are covered by Medicare Part B. Pneumonia shots are also available. Call the Health Department Flu Hotline at 286-2900 for times and locations, or call your doctor. The virus may be similar to last winter, but it's still a good idea to be vaccinated.
You've had the flu shot?
It's always important, especially for risk group or people that deal with risk groups. Yes, that's the only way that you really can prevent very serious illness in those risk groups.
Remember having to reach in here, open that up, and get your head way inside, because the cord didn't open up that far, and call for help. You might want to come around and see the hook it's called. I'm going to give you the location. I'll just sit there and argue with the guy.
Retired police sergeants Frank Drezick and Marv Lebecki both served the city for over 30 years. Now they spend a lot of their time working to preserve the history of the department.
Wanted people to know that we were here, that this department's been here for a long time, 1855 to date, and we wanted to get these items out. They had been in drawers and in boxes in the building and around the department, and it's important that people see these things.
A couple of years ago, Lebecki and Drezick decided it was time to put the accumulated memorabilia in the public eye. With the help of others, they've produced an extensive collection, which is on display in the first-floor hallway of the Safety Academy. The department began with Chief William Beck and 6 officers. Some of their badges are in the exhibit, which says much about how things have changed.
Starting in 1855, the uniforms were different, the equipment they handled was different, the training was different, the personnel were different. The type of person we had back in 1855 was just a large person, bulky, who could handle somebody physically. The badges are an interesting item. We used to have a star badge, and then that was the deputy sheriff kind of badge. And so they wanted a distinctive badge, so in 1901 we created our own badge. And it came city of Milwaukee, and from that, in fact, we use it to this day. We've tried to maintain pictures, photos of the various kind of equipment. The rules and regulations back then were maybe several pages, and what do we have today? A volume.
The volume and the content has changed considerably. The 1881 rule book says a police officer could go into a saloon to quench his thirst, but he couldn't sit down or stay long necessary to do that.
But there's a lot of things here that are of interest to a lot of people who, once they see them, then recollect that I have one at home, or my grandfather was a policeman, or my relative was, and that is how we're getting additional items.
We've had people come forward that have had relatives on the job very early. Sometimes they just want to find out about Uncle Joe. Gee, Uncle Joe was a police officer in 1863. Do you have any record of that? And we do. We have a book, a ledger. It's written in script, and it's very interesting to read. But sometimes they just want to give items that are sitting in a box or up in the attic, and they want that person recognized, that that person had been on the department. And this board behind me, officers that have died in the line of duty, several families have come forward and brought pictures in it we didn't have. One of the officers picked up from the family of Otto Fleet his photo, which we did not have, his cap shield showing that he worked for District 3, and some items that I was unaware of. The officers actually collected tax money. So the department's taken some interesting, turns. They donated a broken baton that was broken in the carriage accident by the horses. So you see those items come forward, and it's very interesting if families want those items here.
With no budget from the city, a police historical society was formed to maintain the exhibit and promote and preserve the history of the department. Donations of memorabilia, cash, or other contributions to the Police Historical Society are welcome.
You get such interesting reaction when people find out what you're doing and why. They're so cooperative because they want to be part of something that shows there's a big history of policing in Milwaukee.
Has it turned out the way you hoped it would or thought it would when you started?
I think it's even better than I had hoped. And there's an intense pride that comes into the passing this information on to the next generation.
We're all proud of it, I think, and the pride is in not only in the display, but in the department itself. It's a good department, and this history, I think, shows that. We have our ups and downs, and all organizations do, but when you look and you walk down this hallway and you see the things that are displayed here, there's a lot of pride.
The artifacts are open for viewing Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. until 4 p.m., primarily for scheduled tours for schools and other groups. The Safety Academy is located at 6680 North Titonia.
This budget aims to improve the lives of Milwaukee residents by making local government more effective and less expensive.
That was the challenge as the mayor presented his proposed budget for 1998. Aldermen had the same aim as they adopted the budget about 7 weeks later.
Aye.
16 ayes, 1 no.
16 ayes, 1 no. The ayes have it. The city budget is approved.
For the first time in 50 years, the tax rate for city purposes was a 3-digit number, $9.99 per thousand of assessed valuation. Aldermen say that number does make a difference, especially to businesses.
If they're coming to the city of Milwaukee, or if they're going to locate their business to the city of Milwaukee, or if they're going to move their business to the city of Milwaukee, it does make a difference that the tax rate is comparable or lower than other municipalities.
The challenge again this year was to maintain the city's quality of services while controlling and reducing costs.
Well, that's the challenge. The mayor and, of course, I'm sure the council as well are very concerned that the money that we extract from the local economy is actually used in a manner that actually does add value to the city. We don't want to just take money away from taxpayers and use it in a manner that doesn't help make the city a better place in which to live, work, and invest. So we basically work with departments to help them analyze how they can best meet their goals and objectives based upon available resources.
Your tax dollar is split 6 ways. About 1/3 goes to pay for city services, another third for public schools. The rest goes to the county, technical college, and sewerage district, with a penny for a state forestry tax and regional planning commission. Payments from residential and commercial property taxes bring in less than 1/4 of the revenue the city needs to provide its services. More than half the budget comes from various state aids and other grants. The vast majority of your tax dollars go to the areas of public safety and public works to pay for those services you've come to expect.
There are basic services that we've come to expect as residents of the city, and so we will push, and I think we will maintain those services and hopefully improve them.
Again, while the bill you pay is sent and collected by the City of Milwaukee, it includes payments to 6 units of government. The combined property tax rate declined by 89 cents compared to last year, primarily due to controlled local government spending and increased state aids to the school district. The rate of $28.54 per thousand of assessed valuation is the lowest combined rate since 1927. Here are some examples of how that affects the total bill. This home near 15th in Oklahoma will see a decrease in the tax bill of about $74. This ranch near 79th in Ohio will see a bill that's about $96 lower than last year's bill. And this duplex near Hackett and Burleigh will see the tax bill drop by about $126. Each also gets a lottery credit of about $74. In addition to the tax rate, the city looked at its competitive situation and changed the way some services are financed.
One of the initiatives as part of this budget was implementation of a sewer maintenance fee. We in the city have paid for that service and those costs on the property tax for years. However, all of our counterparts have paid for that service using a user charge. That is one change that we did initiate as part of the 1998 budget, and what that essentially did was made our tax rate more comparable with our other jurisdictions.
There were a number of reasons for the concerted effort by the council and mayor to control property tax spending, including pension issues.
You know, we have pension issues and lawsuits looming in the background, and so that was really the backdrop for this budget. So based on that, I just think that determined where we were going to go.
So it's really a time period that we really need to focus on controlling spending and reducing spending as much as possible, and really evaluating our current service delivery. Can we better use the people we have and the dollars that we already have, and wherever possible to try to reduce additional spending?
The property tax bill you receive will be basically the same as last year. Your questions are answered in a brochure sent with the statement.
That's very important that they read the brochure that will be included with the bill. It's basically a question and answer brochure, and I think if the people, the taxpayers, will take the time to read that brochure will answer most of their questions, if not all of their questions, regarding the tax bill and the tax collection process.
Remember, the collection of real estate and personal property taxes runs through January 31st. The City Treasurer's office will generally be open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 4:45 p.m. and on other days as well to adequately service taxpayers during the tax collection period.
If they have to come down, we welcome them. If they have a refund coming, where the escrow check is more than the tax obligation, we will give them a refund on the spot. There's no question about that. But we would encourage people, whenever possible, to mail in a bill.
City Hall remains the collection point for taxes, but may not be the site for all budget hearings in 1998. Alderman Pratt plans to hold hearings on a couple of high-interest budgets, like the police and public works, away from City Hall.
Spread the word and get the word out and have it out in, say, at neighborhood libraries or maybe at a church hall and see if we can get more people involved in the process.
Last year, thousands of innocent children were caught in the crossfire of violent crime. And it's not just the children who suffer. How much longer will you let this go on?
This is you and this is me.
Last year, thousands of innocent children were caught in the crossfire of violent crime. How much longer will you let this go on?
The answer to that question was not much longer, as the City of Milwaukee Task Force on Youth Crime and Violence held its first meeting.
It is unacceptable when gangs are running a neighborhood, when drug dealers are the most important role models in a community. And it is impossible to overlay a network of prevention in a neighborhood when gangs and drugs and guns are the rule of the day.
Led by U.S. Senator Herb Kohl, Milwaukee Mayor John Norquist, and U.S. Attorney Thomas Schneider, the city established the task force to create a community-wide plan to reduce violent youth crime. It includes representatives of business, government, law enforcement, and neighborhoods, as well as members of the religious, academic, and medical communities.
I have to tell you that I'm here, and I hope you're here, because I genuinely believe that with the talent and the energy and the commitment in this room right now, that we have the ability to have a significant impact on youth crime in this community. The fact is, we have the information, we have the know-how to significantly reduce the level of crime and youth violence in this community. Imagine the impact that a 30% reduction in homicides in this community would have. Imagine what it would do to our neighborhoods to make places that would attract businesses, attract home ownership, places where people can send their kids out to play in yards at night, where they aren't afraid to walk to the store in the evening, where they say, this is a place I want to live and work and raise a family. This is not just a dream. There are initiatives in this country, including in this community, that have been tried and have been successful. They have achieved the kind of results that I believe everybody in this room would like to see. The question is not, can it be done? The question is, do we have the will to do it? That's the fundamental issue.
Youth violence is particularly tragic because obviously young people have their entire lives ahead of them. And if we can impact on this, it'll add a lot of value to Milwaukee. It'll make Milwaukee a place which is more attractive to business and residents. It will help the city grow economically. and it'll help young people grow, period. And I really appreciate all of your involvement in this.
Officials say the combined effort of tough law enforcement and prevention can lower crime rates. They point to the success of the Milwaukee Weed and Seed Initiative, which helped lower violent felonies in the Weed and Seed neighborhoods by nearly 50%.
We're very excited about our possibilities for having a very significant impact on juvenile crime and juvenile violence in our city. It has been done in a few cities across the country very successfully. Boston is a major example of a city which put together a task force such as this and has had tremendous results in not only reducing...
Senator Cole says Milwaukee can be as successful as Boston with a proactive, aggressive approach, and that Milwaukee will get $3 million in federal crime-fighting funds if the task force can develop a specific strategy for reducing youth crime.
For this program, we have set aside $3 million, which is contingent on our this task force coming up with a satisfactory program, a satisfactory initiative, which I'm sure we'll be able to do, and then that initial grant of $3 million will be forthcoming.
Officials say if the effort is to be a success, the entire community must work together, not only to come up with a plan, but to mobilize public and private support and funding to implement the specific strategies.
Our job, that is the mission of this task force, is to identify the elements of a successful initiative, number one, and number two, then to mobilize this community to do it. It is not just a public sector responsibility, and it is not just a private sector responsibility. It's a partnership, as reflected by everyone in this room, that we all can play a role in.
The Youth Crime and Violence Task Force hopes to report its findings in about 3 months.